Go ahead, please.
Okay, so as Apurva said, I was searching about the adversarial robustness and like anything around the robustness of deep learning models, and to and we found a very good course at ETH Zurich, which revolves around reliable and interpretable artificial intelligence. And we thought, like, why not follow this course and complete it, because it would be a good starting point for a research in this direction. Because generally what happens is whenever we read papers in this direction, we may get intimidated because of the lot of things. So a course would be a good, will give us a good structure in this domain. So just to start with this, a disclaimer is that I do have a decent deep learning knowledge, and this is something very new for me. So I may speak up something wrong. So please feel free to unmute yourself and correct me. So yeah, let's just get started. So as you can see, as we all know, that AI is everywhere from space to underwater also. And we have come to a point where we don't appreciate systems that don't have AI, because we know that the AI systems can beat any other systems in this world right now. And we have to take this with a pinch of salt, definitely. There are terms and conditions apply, but AI is very powerful. So now, why do we care about adversarial robustness in AI systems? We need to understand the fact that at the end of the day, we need to deploy our machine learning models in real systems. And in order to do so, it has to be robust. Even though we have a very good prediction accuracy in our data sets, we might not perform that good when we are into the real world. And that is why this adversarial robustness, that is why there is a recent surge in this domain. And that is why we want our machine learning model to be more interpretable and reliable. So why building reliable AI system is hard? The thing with, we all understand this fact that we can't explain neural networks. We know it performs good, but we don't know the reason. Although we could reason to some extent, but we till date we are not able to find the justification for everything that is happening with neural networks. So let us take an example here. So this is a simple convolutional neural network. And I think we all pretty much understand what CNN does. And let us give an image to this network, and it would rightly classify this as panda. And we all know that we can tune this network, we can make it work in much more efficient way, and we can even predict this panda with even 99% of the accuracy, or even more with the recent deep models that were produced in papers. But there are definitely problems in this. What is the problem? So recently, the researchers, while doing research in this domain, found that if we add some kind of perturbation, and these are not random perturbations, if we add some unrandom perturbations that were carefully designed, we could actually attack these deep learning systems. So initially, we saw that the deep learning model correctly classified this image as a panda, but after adding a small perturbation to the input, we got some image, and to a human eye, this remains a panda. But when we give this image to an AI system, it classifies it as a gibbon, which is kind of wrong, because to an human eye, this is the same panda that we have. So what is this adversarial perturbation that is doing to this neural network? To understand this, we need to understand more about the AI systems, and we need to look at the systems from some other approach now, because whatever that was happening in this domain, it's more of empirical rather than theory. But when we move towards robustness, we need to understand, like, at what mathematical level can we explain our model in order to make it more robust. And how can we even prove the robustness at mathematical level? Because you can't prove robustness at empirical level, because it's really difficult, because you have to explain every data set in the distribution, which is nearly impossible. And that's why you need a mathematical proof for the robustness. And these are some more examples. Like you can see, these are like very popular examples that you can find in any talks given in the adversarial domain. So this is a stop sign, and you add some stickers, and it may classify it as a totally different signboard. And if suppose I have a car like Tesla with autonomous driving and neural net in it, there can be a car crash also. So we need to understand the importance of robustness in real systems. And this is why this has attracted a lot of researchers in this domain. And people now realize that it's not just about the prediction accuracy, but it's more about the robustness accuracy, the adversarial accuracy that we need now. Because at the end of the day, it all depends on how good your model works when it's deployed. And to like add more context to it, you will find some good videos or lectures where you will find these examples, where this is a 3D printed turtle, and they simply rotate it, and it changed the classification from turtle to rifle, which is a joke. I mean, and it can happen to any domain. And you can see some of the examples right on the slides, and there are much more. Because what happened was, when this adversarial attack was pointed out, the researchers, like we understand now that every domain has AI researchers. And then what happened was, the researchers in each domain tried to attack their models, and they found that in every domain they can attack the deep learning models. And it could be very simple, like you can see a man is wearing specs, and he gets classified to some another human, which should not happen in real scenarios. And even just rotating a digit in MNIST dataset, we can totally get a different classification. So a conclusion is that prediction are mostly accurate but can be brittle, and we have to work around it. So as I told, like high accuracy is not enough. And the problem that we have is that whenever we are training our models, we have some kind of distribution that we assume, but we don't know that distribution. We take some samples, we separate it into a test set and training set, and train our model. But in reality, the ML models may experience different distributions, and we may not take into account all the data from this distribution, because we don't know what the distribution is. And that is why we need our system to be robust, so that even though we get something uncertain, something out of our distribution, it should perform decently on that data set also. And also the fact that we assume that all the inputs come from the same probability, but there can be a possibility that some data comes up with the low probability in a given distribution. So that is why this is really important to understand and work in this domain. Now, why do these adversarial examples exist? We need to understand the fact that if a model is simple, then it is general, that is very good, but then there are some shortcomings. I know this statement is like, you won't agree a lot, like neural networks are linear. In fact, we have designed neural networks to be non-linear, and that's why they are so powerful. But the element that introduces the non-linearity into these neural networks are the activation functions. And I know they're non-linear, but if you carefully look at these images, the graphs of these activation functions, you will find that they are piecewise linear. And so, I mean, this linearity in the whole system make it more vulnerable to the attacks. Let me explain you why. But also we need to understand the thing that the linear functions are easy to optimize, and that's why we have this kind of activation functions. And now let us look at like why linear functions are more prone to adversarial attacks. So let us take a simple classification problem here. So suppose this is a linear classifier which beautifully classify these two data sets. But in reality, there can be some area around each data point that we don't know, or in our distribution or in our sample, we don't have that data sets. So if I make some boxes around each of the data point, I may find some of the data or some of the data point that are wrongly classified, and we don't need this. And because our linear models are not that powerful, we will face some kind of this adversarial behavior. But when we use non-linearity, that is much more powerful, what it does is actually memorizes everything, and we could train a very powerful model on even these adversarial examples. And that is why we need to appreciate the fact that why we need non-linear behavior. Also, this is a result from a paper, and this also gives you an intuition why non-linearity is so important. So in this graph, this is a multi-class classification problem. I think it's MNIST dataset where it's classifying the digits, and the correct label is 4, that is indicated in the pink. And in the x-axis you have the perturbation, and in the y-axis you have the argument to the softmax, that is the vector that you give before getting into the softmax. And ideally, if we want to classify that vector, that embedding into some classification, we need that argument to be larger and larger. But here we observe that when we give perturbations to this input, we may find that some other digits are getting classified as the digit, which we don't need. And this is happening because of the linear behavior of the activation functions. We can see that here we have the non-linear behavior, and it is the region where the model is performing the best. And that is why this gives an intuition that we need non-linear models to solve the problem of adversarial robustness. And also this is the same thing like data poisoning. The classical ML problem has a trade-off, like it can, to improve the training accuracy, we lose out on generalization, whereas a neural net kind of memorizes everything. But what researchers have found that even if you add some perturbation to even one image, it can affect other training of other images also. What I mean to say is that you can see here, I just added the perturbation to one image, and with this, the neural network classified some other images in the dataset with wrong classification too. Like all these dogs were classified as fish, and this should not happen. And also there are some more work that has happened around data poisoning, and I have like pointed out 2 of these works. And also, like you can see in this image, we all understand this is a van, and while adding a small perturbation here, which is really insignificant to human eye, the model can go totally wrong with its prediction. So this is what we have around the adversarial attacks. And now, since we have a good motivation and good understanding of what adversarial attacks are and how much disaster they can bring into our models, we need to understand how can we deal with it. And in order to do so, we first have to understand like what we were doing before and what we can do now. So essentially what we do in a neural network model is we learn these weights through a differential manner, that is through gradient descent methods. And what we try to do is minimize the loss function parameterized by theta given x, and we try to find the correct label y. And essentially we try to have this loss function and minimize this loss over all the data samples. This is what we do conventionally. But if we want to do a adversarial attack, what we will do is that we will add a small perturbation to the input, which is delta, and we will try to maximize this loss. So if an attacker is able to do so, then he will be able to successfully implement the adversarial attack to the neural network model. But you might have to understand the fact that in order for this to work, he need to understand, he need to have the model in hand. Like he needs to know the thetas of the model. And essentially, if he knows that theta, he could design a loss function like this. And also, obviously, he also need to have the understanding of inputs to the model. And he also should have access to observe the outputs of the model also in order to calculate the loss. And if he's able to train it and maximize the loss, then he will be easily able to implement a adversarial attack. So essentially, if we are trying to have a ML model that are adversarial robust, we need a adversarially robust generalization. So initially, we were taking the expectation over the distribution with a loss function that was like for a model that was parameterized by theta given x input and the output that we are observing. So essentially, it's almost same, but we are doing a small change in that where we are introducing a inner maximization to it. So essentially, we are minimizing this expectation, and in this generalization also we are minimizing this expectation, but we have a inner maximization problem also. And what also we have to understand the fact that this theta, this delta, that is the perturbation that we are doing to the input, should be small. I mean, if it's too big, then it would be easy, like people would be able to identify the attack, whereas a successful attack will be the one which won't be identifiable. So that is why we also have to understand like how small perturbation can we make to have a successful attack.
Yeah, so everyone, yeah, you can keep asking questions. We don't want it to be, it's good that he's giving it, but if you have any doubts at any point, you can keep asking questions. So just wanted to make that comment. Yeah, Devansh.
Yeah, I have a question for
Mhm.
the slide where you say that neural network is too linear. Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, perfect. So my question is, so it's true that a sigmoid function gives a linear boundary. ReLU function explodes after when you cross a zero boundary. Leaky ReLU solves it a little bit, but then again it's not differentiable at zero, etc., etc. The images to the right side, you have the green dots and you have the blue dots, and
Right.
the decision boundary is straight, right? So that's your decision boundary, the black straight line. Yeah, but you are suggesting that if we add non-linearity activation in the neural network, we break the property of the piecewise linearity of neural networks and make a non-linear decision boundary. That's the suggestion here, right?
I think we are not breaking it, but then this example was an indication that if we are using a linear classifier, we might not able to take the robustness into our model, because
Right.
a linear model, because it won't be perfectly able to fit over the data in order to even incorporate the adversaries that we may have in our distribution.
That is fine, but I'm wondering about what about the bias and variance trade-off? Because if it fits properly around all your data points, the decision boundary at the extreme right, it looks too flexible to be to have a proper variance, because now I have to fit all my data points according to that wiggly line, the decision boundary. I'm not sure how the non-linearity property of neural network will fit into the bias and variance. That's
Yeah,
something
I
to look at as well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And there is a paper that shows that if you want robustness into your model, then you have to sacrifice the accuracy. And even I think there is a paper that has proved that you can't achieve robustness without sacrificing accuracy, and you will sacrifice to some extent, like even from 80% to 50%. But still people would accept that because it is robust, because in some dynamic systems, real world systems, they need robustness with some certainty.
Yeah.
But then that is true, like that is really true.
And
lose out on
one
it.
more question I have on the slide where you add the delta in your differentiation function. Yeah, the last one. Probably, no, next one. Yeah, perfect. Is this delta a perturbation that we are adding to the system, or it comes from my adversary who is trying to break my deep learning model? The delta.
I see. So essentially, attacker will add this delta. So
Right.
what we want is, like, initially while designing the model itself, we will add some delta and then train the model in this fashion.
So in this case,
So
the
if we do
are adding it. In this case, the trainer or the model designer is doing it because he is trying to make the model adversarially robust.
Nice.
So he's adding those noisy samples in the training data so that your model that you come up with is robust at the end. That's what is happening here. So when you're seeing this delta, and that's why you see this capital delta is there as well, like the triangle one. And but that's basically the region under which your delta should lie. It could be a, generally it's a spherical ball that you're looking with the radius something, and you want that delta to fall within that range. So that's part of the training process. And the hope is that you will cover all the possibilities that an adversary will be able to try, but that's an NP-hard problem. You cannot do that because they're almost like infinitely possible.
Exactly. And I find it extremely fascinating because I just wrote in my thesis that our goal is to train our model in non-noisy data. Because if you add noise to your training data, from a computational learning perspective, your expected hypothesis from your model will shift toward bad hypothesis, and the goal is to make it towards a proper hypothesis. And this is actually very interesting. Sometimes you want to add noise into your training data.
And the fact is, here you want robustness. Accuracy is not accuracy is important for sure. You don't want to have lower accuracy, but you want robustness as well. So you are looking at a kind of contradictory objectives, and the goal would be 90% robust, 90% accurate model. If you can get it, yeah, sure. But it's still a little, I would say, it's still under progress.
Very interesting.
Okay, good.
And also, thanks for pointing this out.
Yeah, Malik.
I still have one question. So why doesn't accuracy matter, right? Because a good system is like it accurately predicts something, right? So if your model is like 20% accurate, even if it's robot, it's of no use to you, right? But it will give you bad prediction. So that's already a bad thing. So when you talk about accuracy, do you mean only on training? So what do you say is that the generalization is better? So generalization is better, generally talked about when we are talking about test set. So what actually is the goal here? So if it's robust, but it should also have a good performance.
Right. I think the robustness that we are talking here is from the point of view of adversarial attacks. And yes, I mean, the accuracy will be less, and there is always a trade-off. I mean, I know a 20% accurate model won't be of any use, and that's why we have to balance out with our application. Like for our application, can we show something like 60% accurate and maybe 80% robust? And maybe that would be a good starting point for a research, and then maybe build upon things in which you can like gradually increase your accuracy in some way. I mean, somehow it's kind of
So
trade-off,
is
and we
there
have to deal
any
with it.
study which do a comparison? Like we have a precision recall curve, right? So is there any metric
Right.
of this kind which affects which can take up operating point for x-axis is generalization, y-axis is robustness? Is there any metric of it? Not there.
I don't know
So I think
about
that
this,
can be a
but
good idea, right? Because already you have ROC and AUC for this kind of, if you want to take two things into account. So I think if
right,
this
makes
metric was there, it could have been good.
That's correct. A good, Maulik. Good point, Maulik. So yes, your point is very valid. What would a low accurate model be worth if, even if it's 100% robust? You don't, that's a very good point. And absolutely. So the goal is to improve both robustness and accuracy. And eventually, if you say a model is 50% robust with 90% accuracy, that's a good sign. So you want your accuracy certainly to be on the higher side if you can make it happen, because robustness, getting 100% robustness, like even getting a higher robustness, is a very, very hard problem. It's an NP hard problem in itself. So you're absolutely right. And there is some work that is coming out around metrics for evaluation of the robustness and accuracy together in a framework, so that you can evaluate the model's performance based on accuracy and robustness in a way that's useful. You can actually use those metrics for deploying the system. You're absolutely right. Good point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I'll ask a last question.
Yeah.
Do you have any in the paper? Do they discuss anything about the nature of delta? Is it what kind of noise do they perturb with?
Yeah, exactly. So this course revolves around the delta, like how can you find this delta or approximate the delta. So this course is pretty much about this delta only, like how to add this delta to your model while training. So you make some approximations, like box approximations. Right.
Yeah, this will come because this is a course, so he's just giving the first introductory lecture. There will be there are a ton of things that you can do with delta. Actually, your PhD thesis can be on delta if you want.
Yes.
Interesting.
Okay, go
so
ahead.
I have noticed that people already do this type of data augmentation in images. So you already had some random noise in that. So
right,
it's already your delta there. So I'm not sure why they are still affected by some small noise.
That's the interesting part, and that's what has been observed. Even you do whatever data augmentation you want to do, but even a well-crafted noise can really fool the system really easily, and that's the whole issue around adverse. So an attacker who is smarter will not add that random noise that you're adding to your model. He will do a very well-crafted attack. And so there are attacks that have been shown that no robust technique at the moment can actually can be any technique at the moment that has been created can be fooled by those attacks that it has been shown. So yes, you are absolutely right. People do all that stuff in computer vision, but still there are those well-crafted smart attacks and given you have knowledge about, and there are various kinds of attacks. We can, and I think Abhijit will talk about it. It's black box, white box attacks where in some cases you have full knowledge about the system. In some cases, you have no knowledge about the internals of the systems. If you have an idea of what the theta is, what the y's are, you have knowledge, and what your neural network architecture is, you can craft your attack. While if you don't have one, then you have a different kind of attack models that one can actually evaluate. Right. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Anyways, good. So yeah, Vijay, continue, please. I think yeah. Good.
So yeah, I mean, I can skip some of the slides and can get to some important things. So as rightly pointed out by Maulik, that we do data augmentation, and then still we won't be able to achieve the robustness. That is because there are infinite number of augmentations that we can do to an image. So suppose this is an MNIST data set, number 7, and suppose this is 28 cross 28 image, and each pixel is 1 and 0. So essentially, if we are just playing with brightness, then also we have 2 raised to 28 cross 28 possibilities of augmentation of these images. or attacking this images or changing this image in terms of brightness, because for each pixel of this image, I can make it 0 or 1. So essentially, there are infinite number of adversaries that can happen to any image. And that is why it is not possible to actually look at all the adversaries and how they are performing and then take an accept. So suppose, and there are many, like suppose there are many infinite number of images that we can, like, for example, we are able to produce this infinite number of images through some brightness brightness changes. Also, we can do some rotation, and then we will. So these are our affine layers and activation functions, and here we are getting our values at the hidden layers, and essentially we will get outputs for all these images. And if we are able to produce all these images, then we will look at all this data and look at the output, and then we will see if we are getting the right output, like, because all this output should actually classify it to 7 only, even if we are having some perturbations to this image, because to a naked eye, to a human eye, no matter what brightness it has, even it has rotated a bit, we will classify it as 7. So that is why this technique is, we can't move with this technique, because simply because we can't work with infinite number of images. So what's the other way around? So this is a really interesting thing that has proposed, and this is the way in which we are going to add the delta in our input. So what people have proposed was, like, it's true that we can't produce infinite number of images, but can we express all this input with a symbolic finite region? So essentially, this will be a convex approximation of all the vectors that we may have. And there is a technique to it, and this course revolves around how can you find a region which can help us to train the model in the most efficient way. So essentially, I would say this approximation that we are doing, if we are doing too much approximation, then the symbolic region that we are forming may have a lot of over approximation, and we may not be able to get a very good performance. And if we are working too hard to make this region truly fit this data, what I mean to say is, like, what if I can produce a region that is able to reflect what data I have correctly, then this region will be too complex to work with. And because we essentially, what I need you to understand, that if we are symbolizing our input, then essentially we are passing these regions through the affine layer and not the vectors anymore. So essentially, we have to work everything with these regions, and this is what is shown here. So I will have a symbolic representation of all the inputs, and this is a very high level view. I know, like, even when I was reading about it for the first time, I was finding it like how can we just make a region with the inputs that we have. But this, when you go into the maths, go more deep into the course, we will be able to find out, like, how are we going to do this. And essentially, we are passing these images through our layers of the neural networks. And as you know, you might have intuitively realized by now that the way these regions are getting passed through these layers are not same as the normal vectors that we were passing. So that is why there is some kind of transformations that we also have to work with while designing this model. So suppose my symbolic region is simple a box. So there are box transformation over the fine layer and ReLU layers. Suppose this is some complex shape like Xenotope. So then there are different transformations that we do with this layer. So what I essentially want to say is, if suppose we have a normal image like this, we transform it into a vector, and then in these neural networks, we do matrix multiplication with these networks and use the ReLU activation functions over the vectors. But it is not as simple as that in this case. because the transformations has to be different, because we are doing this affine transformation over the whole region. And this course revolves around finding the best region that we can get. And again, it's a trade-off, like how approximate it is and how complex you want. And so essentially, to give you an intuition, like what I have understood, you can have this region as a constraint in your optimization problem. And the more difficult the constraint is, suppose this is a spherical region, then our constraint will be non-linear, like quadratic, and it would be non-convex optimization, like very hard to solve. Whereas if this region is box region, the constraints will be linear, and it will be relatively simpler to train this model. So this is what we are going to do in this course. And also one thing to point out, that in this course, we are mostly working with white box attacks. That is, we are going to assume that we know the model. So I think, yeah, I mean, if someone can come up with black box attacks and black box training also, then it would be a good session as an extension to this course. And yeah, I mean, when you have the input in this form, then there are a lot of complexities, like what kind of loss function will you use? How are you going to update the weights? And essentially, you will be working in these geometric regions rather than vectors. And also, since we'll be doing multiple iterations while training, you also need to understand the fact that while doing the transformation, when you have to pass this region into the network, you will do some transformations, and this have to be very fast because you have to do multiple iterations of training here. And if it's too slow, then it will take too long, because we know, like, simple matrix multiplications, when we have simple vectors as an input, do affine and ReLU activations, and then also it takes so long. So what if I have to work with the symbolic regions, I have a deeper network, and I have to do multiple iterations, then it will take really long. And that's why it's a really important trade-off that we have to understand, like how simpler symbolic representation that you can afford for the input and application that you have in hand. So there are something, like as Devang rightly pointed out, like, is there any trade-off between performance accuracy and robustness? And there are, I think, 2 or 3 papers that have actually proved that this is true. Like, you can't achieve both at the same time. At this point of time, I don't know, like this field is going to is working. This area is like expanding fast, so we may find something good in future. But right now, I don't think there is some way around increasing both at the same time. And also, as I told at the start of the lecture, in order to prove robustness, you have to mathematically prove it and show like you can have a robust model. And with what confidence can we say like we can prove our robustness? And that is why you will observe in this course that we are moving from empirical to more mathematical level. And we are trying to mathematically interpret and explain our neural network models. And yeah, this is what this course will be about. And also in the later sections of the course, we will see how to combine the logic and deep learning, which is a really hot thing because we know that we can't explain with our deep learning models. A simple thing like if a credit is getting rejected for a person by a neural network, we may not know like what reason it is. Like, is it his income, residence, conditions, job? And we need our neural network to actually help us give these parameters. Like how much can we increase each of the parameter in order to get into a good region. So essentially, we can get this with our decision trees or simple classical ML models, but we are not able to do this with the deep learning, and this is why combining logic and deep learning is really important. And if you think about it, then if you understand the logic, the connection between the logic and the deep learning, you will understand the fact that the adversarial examples are just a special case of this thing. I think we are short of time. That's why I'm skipping a bit. So essentially, the later section
So that's
of
fine.
this course will.
We can, if we can stop and we can continue in the next week as well. So you don't want to rush through because there's a lot of things. So it's okay if we go slow. It's more important to have a discussion and understand it. So if you think that this is a good time to stop, yeah, we can continue, because I think it's when you're talking about logic and deep learning, it's a very important aspect. And to be honest, in this group, I think Anubhav might be interested in this, because that's a very, very interesting area where you try to formalize the neural network properties and try to extract those properties from the models for explainability purposes and robustness purposes. So maybe I think it might be a good time to stop where we are and continue on from this in next week. A very introductory lecture. He was just